just a little confirmation before we go on.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So hello, everyone. I'm just going to start with a little bit of a question. So just kind of, if you could all think about it, when was the last time when you were completely certain about something, like not partially vague, nothing, just no questions asked, completely certain, and still got it wrong? It happens a lot of times. Like at this point, it's beyond countable. The scary fact comes up when the same situation is like not unusual in a medical context or in clinical contexts. So good evening, everyone. My name is Isha and I'm a neuroscience major and I conduct research with medical school primarily. And I came up with a medical education tool, but something a little bit more advanced in one of the sense. So like I said, it was about like a month or 2 months ago that I was at a conference and one of the psychiatrists mentioned that about one of the cases. It took like nearly 6 to 8 months to get to the right diagnosis. So this patient, she had the right symptoms, but still the wrong diagnosis. And this was like a recent case. And the problem was that the doctor wasn't ignorant. He was certain. The problem wasn't exactly knowledge. It was just the shape of the thinking that the medical school gets training for. Interestingly, in many of the cases, including like most of them come in psychiatric contexts, but also like in other contexts as well. These take like anywhere between misdiagnosis take anywhere between 10 to 20 years. And on the screen, you can see the stats around it. So when I got to learn more about the problem, was basically that doctors read like 5,000 plus hours of medical literature, and still like today these diagnostic error rates haven't moved, like, and this has been like almost the same since 30 years. So more information basically didn't fix anything. It was because information was never the problem. So as an evidence, I went into some research, and this was guided from the people that I work with at the lab and at the public health department. And I pulled up a lot of these studies which had like the same embeddings, that the problem is the knowledge, it's the reasoning structure. And it's not that AI in medical education is not advancing or it's not being implemented. It definitely is. So the progression graph looks like content AI, which is what we started with because we needed compliance in the industry. It then went towards like coaching AI, which is where most current solutions that I have researched about lie in. But the next and the most, let's just say, sophisticated and the most impactful layer would be the reasoning AI, which is what I have built. It's called JudgementOS. So we don't have the content. The content is supplied by the medical institution, and the compliance is already set by these institutions, including the evaluation of how reasoning is judged. Our platform just watches how the student thinks. So I'm gonna pull up the demo. Hopefully you could still see it. So there's this case presented. It's a simulated case at this point, of a particular patient. So the user or the medical or the clinician in training sees this particular case, goes through all these details, which is like similar to the patterns that they are trained offline as well. And I used 11 Labs to put in like a patient voice note.
I'm Maya. My GP suggested I record something before the appointment, so here goes. I've been on these antidepressants for 6 months now, and honestly, nothing's changed. I still wake up exhausted even after sleeping half the day. I've lost like 4 kilos without trying. Most mornings just feel gray.
So this voice note is embedded just to give the user or the student just a bit more context about the case that they have, and then the user begins reasoning. So they see the same case on this left panel, and they start to reason the way they would in the real world, right? So for the sake of this demo, I already set up an answer just so I can go through it a little quickly. Yeah, so once the patient basically comes, I'm sorry, wait. Yeah, this should work now. Yeah, so once the patient comes up with the answer, the user comes up with the answer, there are reasoning agents embedded here, which would analyze what has been going wrong in that reasoning. So the user can click them up and see what has been going wrong as a form of feedback. There's an LLM generated, this is an LLM generated response, and they can see all the flags. These are the biases that were caught in the reasoning based on the particular answer that the user presented. So basically, we have not built a layer that is giving them content. It's just analyzing the way they are reasoning to get to the answer. So under the hood, I basically set up 3 biases, and this was again based on a research paper and guidance on what are the largest like root causes behind these diagnostic errors, and I've embedded them in the LLM prompts that basically analyzes the reasoning answer that we have. And beyond the hackathon, this is like the major layer that I've built. And beyond the hackathon, again, I'm exploring how to integrate this in the current AI education tool based workflow. And these are the 3 phases that I can recognize from all of the research and talking that I've done. First is like presenting this as a standalone tool that I've already done in one of the classes that I'm taking. And one of the ideas that came up was to provide an API endpoint of the same tool, because a lot of these edtech in tools that are being adopted in medical institutions are very strict about compliance. We ideally at this point do not want to take care of compliance. We just want to embed this particular layer. So this is how I'm going to be executing going on. So yeah, we don't teach doctors what to think, that they already have that content in coaching contexts. We are like literally only catching them in the act of thinking wrong. So yeah, that was my demo. Thank you.
Isha, thanks for that. I'm curious how you think about building trust amongst your user base, in this case, medical professionals. I know that from friends I have in the medical profession, there's a lot of mistrust of AI right now. I think some folks are finding use. Some folks are relying on human instincts, given it's a pretty human endeavor. So talk to me about some of the feedback you've gotten and how you think about building it around that concern.
That is true. In fact, when I was building this, I myself, having worked with one of those cohorts, was a little bit resistant, knowing that trust is basically the asset in medical institution. But upon like researching more, I got to know that the trust comes from compliance layer. And the compliance comes from the content and the evaluation, which is set by the standards of these institutions. That is why I iterated in my demo that the content and the evaluation strategy will still be from that particular institution, because a lot of tools that come up in this space, they try to control those 2 aspects, which is the make or break for trust. So I won't control those 2. Our product won't control those 2. We would only like create an API endpoint, like present this layer as a plug and play into their existing databases. So everything that they have built, it's just the same. It's like a layer introduced on top of it, which is like catching reasoning. And again, because you could manually put in what kind of biases does an educator wants to catch, it gives them all the flexibility that they would want.
My question was actually the same as Jonah's, and based off of your answer, a follow-up question. I think if you are selling, actually, maybe it's more advice than a question, so I can pause there if that's not okay. Okay, it seems to be all right. I'm wondering about the language that you're using in your deck of catching people in the act of doing something wrong. So if doctors are the decision makers or the users, I would never want to buy something that is catching me in the act of doing something wrong. What I would buy though is a tool that helps me avoid making mistakes so that I don't waste time on misdiagnosing. So I would, if I were you, just think differently about the framing of your product, but I think it's great and loved your presentation.
Thank you so much. And I will take care of it. I understand. That's true.